It's happening.
Yay!
Do we even remember how to record a podcast?
We don't know how to do a podcast, and we're not used to being in the same frame.
Yes, we didn't actually know what to do because here we are in person. And we tried being in separate rooms and we were like, well, that's no fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be much more fun to be together and then stare at ourselves as we record a podcast. So this is actually the first podcast where we've had to like look at ourselves.
Yeah.
Where's my eyeline?
I'm just gonna look at you because your hair looks great today.
Okay, I'm going to look at you because you're pretty.
For those of you who've never been to our podcast before, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. This is the Create Podcast. This is the most beautiful, wonderful Kristen Hankey, and I'm her friend Natalie Roy. And we've been doing this podcast together for many years now.
Yeah.
And we used to be very consistent with the podcast, and now we've given ourselves permission to do it when the inspiration strikes and when it feels good, and without any hustle. Because I do feel like we did many podcasts about hustle and freeing ourselves from hustle while we were hustling.
Yes.
And so to get really congruent, we had to rewrite some of those codes inside ourselves.
It's teach what you most want to learn. I'd love to learn how not to hustle. I'm
Yes.
such a Gemini. I'm constantly in the either deep relaxation flow or deep generating place, and
Mhm.
learning how to get them a little closer together and more integrated is a constant evolution.
Oh, that's so interesting because I'm a Pisces, so I have the two fish.
Uh-huh.
And my balancing act is more on the vertical plane, where it's like I'm either like in the unconscious
Yeah.
or in my deep meditation, spirituality, like introspection, or I'm like out in the world getting things done. And I can't figure out because it's like always like I really just want to be under the water in my feelings,
Yes.
but I have to come up and do things with it.
So funny because I'm a Gemini, so I'm much more in the horizontal plane.
Yes.
I'm either like, I'm over here in my feminine flow, I'm deeply communing with my higher power and nature, or I'm over here and I'm like, I want this and that and not that and over here and this goes like this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
I love a Gemini. My daughter's a Gemini.
Yes.
I'm in big trouble. So here we are for the Create podcast. And for those of you that didn't know, Kristen and I taught a retreat together. And it's been a long time since we taught a retreat together, an in-person retreat in Florence, Italy.
And we
And
learned a lot about the vertical and horizontal playing out and how to keep those, how they want to become integrated in the next steps of our evolution. The masculine and feminine, or yin and yang, or the, as you said, the conscious and the unconscious.
and I think that what ended up happening, which is really cool when you get into a room with people and once you see all of the people that sign up and all the people that come together, that even what we might have planned for the retreat definitely shifts and changes based on the energy in the room and what everyone's bringing to the space. And a lot of what ended up happening was, when we talked about these different places we can land, a lot of what we were talking about ended up being this balancing of polarities, whether inside of us, in the world, inside the art that we want to create, inside the projects that we want to do. And a lot of it had to do with getting out of judgment, getting out of rejecting any of the polarity, and just saying, what's that sacred space where there's a union between those things inside of me that feel like they're in opposition or they're in conflict with one another. And that ended up being a really powerful exploration. And then after we finished teaching the retreat, we went off our separate ways. Although, unbeknownst to us, we both booked trips to Lake Como, but not together.
Yes. So we got to meet up in Lake Como,
So
which was fun.
we did get to meet up.
We ate some pizza in Lake Como, which was divine. I want everyone to know I ate pasta every single day and gelato almost every day. I really tried hard, but I did have to miss a couple gelato days.
Every day, yeah.
But yeah, we made some dreams happen. I want to tell our audience about that beautiful night when the fireworks went off, and you and I looking for exactly the right place because we were hungry and we wanted to find a place to eat, but we also wanted to watch the fireworks.
And it was one of those things where we had a vision of
Mhm.
what we wanted, and it felt like a lot of closed doors. Like we'd be like, "This restaurant's cute," and they're like, "No more tables," or "Oh, this place is cute. The ambiance isn't exactly what we want. Oh, this place is nice. Oh, no, the menu is not exactly what we want." Like, and so
You and I are like Goldilocks. We will not stay at a restaurant
we
if
would
the
not settle.
ambiance is not right.
No, no, no.
We will keep walking even if we've already been walking for like 7 miles.
But it was really a thing where it was getting down like,
Mhm.
okay, fireworks start at 10:30, and I think it was like 9:45,
Yeah.
and, we hadn't figured it out what to do yet. And so what we were laughing because 'cause we're like, "Well, everything's a spiritual lesson in
Yeah, yeah,
disguise,"
of
right? And
course.
so we were saying, inside these kinds of opportunities, there's at any given moment, it's easier to give up than stick to the vision, and especially when it's like, well, it just seems like there's lots of closed doors. It seems like the vision doesn't seem like it wants to happen. But really, what was happening is the vision was just evolving. It was evolving, it was evolving. And we had to trust that it might look and feel a little bit different than we had intended, but we had to
Yes.
trust that it was all still for us and it was all still the right things happening.
And then we found the restaurant that had the ambiance, had the menu. We sat down and we looked at each other and we both went, I'm I'm not hungry.
No,
We
we found exactly what we wanted, and then we didn't want it anymore.
And then the vision changed. So once we achieved our vision, we realized it was no longer the desire. And we're like, what do we actually want? We both would like a glass of wine and we'd like to watch the fireworks now. And so we went into a wine store.
Well, it was kind of like a restaurant,
Yeah.
and we were like, where are we gonna find takeout wine? Like, that's not a thing. And we're like, that restaurant looks really hipster.
Oh, it was so
If
cute.
anyone's gonna have takeout wine, the hipster restaurant will. And of course, they didn't do takeout wine, but they're like, well, we can give you like a coffee cup and give you some wine. We're like, yes.
So we took our little coffee cups of wine and we went over to the river and we sat up on the ledge. Very dangerous. Either one of us could have gone straight back into the water. But we sat there and what we loved watching were all the
Oh,
different groups of friends
mm,
gathering together, all these people that you could see have known each other for a really long time. It was community.
yeah.
And then everyone, it felt like all of Florence was out there. So many people, as far as I could see, and they all looked up in wonder and in awe. And it
Mhm.
was like, oh, this is what we long for. It's collective reverence and nervous system regulation on a large scale. All these people and everyone in their body is feeling a sense of wonder.
Mm,
And it was such a beautiful feeling. And I remember Natalie and I looking at each other like, "Are we in a dream right now?
yeah.
This almost feels
It felt
surreal."
like a plant medicine moment
Yeah.
where something otherworldly. And I remember specifically there was this group of 6 friends that were in front of us, and I believe their age range was maybe 65-ish
Mhm.
of these 6 friends. It was these 3 couples, and they were just like chic and cool, and they're speaking Italian to each other, and you could just feel that they're all like, "Hey, let's meet up at our local place and then go together to see the fireworks." And they were just having fun and being in joy. And then we saw this very young couple, like early 20s, maybe,
Yeah.
and they had a little baby and they were singing to the baby. And everywhere we looked, there was this expression of just connection,
Yeah.
community. And then this idea that we all came together for a purpose, the purpose of watching the fireworks, but it was everyone coming together for the purpose of taking a deep breath and living in appreciation of beauty. And there was something so profoundly powerful because what I've noticed a lot, and I actually saw Kristen Bell wrote something about it that I thought was really powerful today. She said, we're living in an age of outrage addiction,
Mm.
and where, everyone sees something online or sees something in the world, and you just want to have outrage about it and project that outrage into the world. So what's happening is we're having this collective experience of what we hate, what we want to dismantle, what we don't like. And there's absolutely a place for that when we're talking about unjust systems and things that have been alive for a long time that need to now come crashing down so that we can build something more healthy and more inclusive. And where are we addicted to the feeling of relief you get when your nervous system gets into the sympathetic fight zone and you get off of that constant texting, constant typing, spewing vitriol, othering, making separateness. And that temporary satisfaction that it gives you is actually creating really big unhealthy ripple effects inside our bodies and inside our world.
Yes, and Michael Beckwith will talk about we're actually getting hits of cortisol from this rage, these emotions that are coming up. We're getting hits of these toxic chemicals that our body will produce. And it's not good for us. It's giving us all the stress. It produces too much acid in the system. And that when we're in a relaxed state, our body actually produces these tonic chemicals.
Mm,
So when we are getting this constant, like these hits, we don't even realize our body starts to crave the hit. It
mm,
starts to crave the stress hit.
like sugar.
Yes, yeah.
Mm,
And so now we're looking for stress. Our body is braced for stress. And if the stress isn't there, we'll create it. We'll
mm.
seek it out. It's like, it's 9 a.m. Usually I'm in traffic now. I'm going to look for someone to be mad at. Or I'm usually, pissed at my coworkers by now. So I'm going to look for something to upset me. Or we get in these repetitive thoughts of victimhood that just keep circulating.
Yeah.
And we're a little drunk on them.
Yeah. There's author, psychologist, John Gardner, who had this great quote saying that self pity
Mhm.
or like living in complaining victimization is the most powerful non pharmaceutical narcotic
Ooh,
because he says
ooh.
it gives you that hit,
Mhm.
it gives you that temporary
Yeah.
hit, and simultaneously it separates the victim from reality.
Yeah, and it keeps you in a disempowered state,
Hmm.
right? So if you're deep, I can notice in myself when I fall into a victim narrative,
Hmm.
and my ego can be so slippery, I don't
Mm,
even realize I'm doing it. And then all of a sudden, I'm
you're
like,
in it.
oh, and I have resentments, and oh, it's harder for me, and oh, and I am making a case, I am making a story. I don't even realize it's taken over my body. And that keeps me out of proactive action. And
Yes.
then I'm actually in this kind of defense mode with the world, as opposed to when I've done my work. Like when I've done
Yes.
my inner work and I have done my journaling, I've done my processing, I've done my meditation. I am always laughing at how I saw this Russell Brand quote of he's like, it just takes me hours in the morning to find my baseline. I'm like, me too. I'm right there. Just to feel like I'm a sane human being,
Yeah,
I need all the
and
things.
what's interesting about parenting that I've noticed, and I remember this, we for years talked about the importance of a morning
Yeah.
practice. And for years, like moms would reach out and be like, yeah, but like, what if you're a mom? And we're like, just find 5 minutes. And now I'm like, oh no, you don't have 5 minutes. Like that's what you don't. I was telling Kristen this morning, I'm like, I shower at night now when the baby goes to bed because like you can't actually do it any other time. But what has been really fascinating to me is I cannot use any practice to get grounded anymore. There's no practice I can use to get grounded other than my breath. It's all I have
Mm.
left because the baby wakes up at 6. So I can't like I mean I could get up at 5:30 and meditate, but like I'm so exhausted. Like I need to
Yeah.
sleep so badly. Um but it's like all I have because like I wake up to her crying and I get out of bed and I go to her and I see that her needs are met. And so the whole time I'm doing it, I have to be in a constant state of how are you, Natalie? How's your breath? How you feeling? Are you breathing deep? Are you giving love to yourself? Pour a glass of water while you make her bottle. Like I have to just be vigilant, but it's really interesting that I can't be addicted or rely on any practice. The only practice is presence.
Yeah.
Um, but there is an amazing opportunity inside of parenting to see that her world and her baseline is utter and complete joy. And that the way she walks around the world and the way she sees the world is with curiosity and awe. And when I can remember that that's how we start and that's how we were designed to come,
Mm.
then it is really interesting when I see the stuff that I want to attach to that is super, super meaningless, right?
Right.
Like, um, and certainly this summer traveling with her, we were away for 5.5 weeks and she got 6 teeth during that time. So anyone who's listening who knows the experience of a teething baby, you can imagine we're traveling to different countries. She's jet lagged. She's not on her routine. She doesn't have her normal formula. She's teething. You can imagine. And when I look back on the time, I was like, it was so joyful. It was so joyful because I got to see Italy and France and the ocean and the lake and the flowers through her experience,
Yeah.
not through mine.
Yes.
And it's almost like if I had been on that trip without her, I would have been on my phone. I would have been on my email. I would have been reading the news. I would have been maybe overindulging or over like I deserve this. I'm gonna and instead it was just like I'm just gonna be present with whatever her experience is. And it got me out of those chemicals
Yeah.
long enough to now that I'm home from vacation, when those hits and those chemicals come back in, my body can feel like, oh, we went down a wrong path here.
Ooh.
Like, oh, I can feel like the absence of them for long enough gives me the clarity to know when they're kicking back in. It's almost like, when you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break from sugar,
Yeah.
right? And you do a detox from sugar, and then the first sugar you eat, you're like, wee,
Yeah.
or like you get a headache, or it's too much because your body is no longer normalized the experience of that substance.
Yes.
So I wonder, and psychology says human beings spend 70% of their waking time in stress.
Yeah.
70% of our time is in stress, but it's such so when you feel stress, that means you've gone beyond the 70%. That means the stress level has raised past that because the 70% is the baseline. That's just what we're used to hustling through or accommodating around or getting life done.
Oh, and like any drug, we build up a tolerance.
Yeah.
So then,
So we need more of
so we
it.
actually need more of it. When you were saying that, what you found on your vacation, I'm like, oh, I know that from plant medicine.
Yes.
So what I know from psychedelics is like
Children and psychedelics, our greatest
they're,
teachers.
they're very very similar. That I can go into a state of like deep deep relaxation
Yep.
where my body is like so open,
Mm.
so available, so rested and connected, and I feel this deep sense of peace. And then just being able to notice what that feels like in my body, that I'll be able then to feel like the next day, oh, I just let something in that
Mhm.
doesn't want to be here.
Mm.
And I can find that it shows me a new baseline
Mhm.
of
Yes.
what's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think we get the power is we get to choose, and we get to choose outside of circumstance.
Yeah.
I do think that one of the one of the biggest lies that we've been fed is that your circumstances dictate your thoughts, feelings, and actions,
Absolutely.
as opposed to my thoughts, feelings, and actions are constantly creating and recreating the given circumstances in my life. And I know that that's a hard pill to swallow from a responsibility standpoint, because then it starts to say, oh, so this illness is my fault or this divorce is my fault. Part of the way I feel like we're taught to maintain victimhood is by seeing things from a perspective of blame.
Hmm.
And as opposed to seeing, no, there's no fault, there's no blame. In fact, we could almost look at the entire, universal spectrum as neutral. It's an entirely neutral experience. When I stand on the street corner and a cab happens to come by and splash water on me, it wasn't because I was a bad person or I did something wrong. I just happened to be standing in the place where that event was meant to occur, or whatever. We could almost see it from a more neutral perspective. But then to say that inside anything, inside getting splashed with the water, inside the divorce, inside the difficult circumstance, inside that, my point of power is always the choice of how I experience myself inside of it, how I choose my attitude, how I choose outside of whatever the given circumstance is. That I'm always in a point of power when I take the responsibility of my own choice. And I'm always disempowered when I feel that the choice has been taken away from me because of the circumstance.
Yeah, and I know that we're all born into different circumstances, and it can be it is a true thing that certain people have different advantages and
Yeah.
privileges,
Yeah.
and that's really important to recognize. And also, I can see myself one a story that I can make up a lot is, well, being a female director, the stats will tell you,
Hmm.
what male directors get, and you can look over time and how women were actually kept out of the DGA and kept from being hired, and I can watch my brain make that story. But I also know it can be a place of disempowerment for me if I stay stuck there.
Mm,
So, okay, maybe that might be part of the jumping off point, but what is within me to change? Can I look at some of my patterns that might not be helping me? Can I look
mhm.
at some of the ways, like if I walk into a situation and think it's stacked against me, I'm actually can see myself not try as hard. And I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
watch where I
yeah.
don't try for something because I already decide the door is closed without even knocking.
Mm,
Um, and one of the things that I can see in myself is I'm so scared of not being able to have my opportunity or advantage that then I spread my energy too thin. And so can I take responsibility for that? Like,
mm,
so where do I have responsibility to make a different choice, and where do I have power? And when I keep my focus there, it helps me become the best version of myself. And I heard
mm.
someone say recently, how do I take responsibility for my actions no matter what anyone else is doing?
Yes,
No matter what playing field I'm on, no matter what the circumstances look like, can I just own my own behavior and my own character?
yes.
Which is hard to do. And I also want to say I don't want to do it all the time. I
Yeah.
I don't.
Like,
I
it doesn't
don't.
sound like fun
No,
at
at all.
all.
Yes. But I also know that I get stuck in my own bullshit if I don't take responsibility for myself and I don't look at what I can change in me.
Yes.
Because working on myself and just working on my own stuff is a full-time job. And I actually
Uh,
don't have time to complain about all the stuff going on in the if I'm focusing on the things inside of me that can change
yeah.
so that I can be a better friend or citizen or
Mhm,
coworker,
mhm.
collaborator. There's a lot in me.
What I hear in that, that was a really, really honest share, I love
It's
that. Um, what I hear in that I see in my own self is how I can use the circumstances that feel like they're against me in some way, or it's like it's harder because of this or that. It's like I can use that given circumstance to justify how I feel, as opposed to just saying, Natalie, you have a right to feel however you feel without any justification. Like, you have the right to just feel deep pain today, regardless of what your circumstances, but what I can notice for myself is if the story that I'm buying into is, you know, I'm an actor, we're on strike right now, I can't do what I love, and nobody cares about it. And the only time anyone's going to start caring about it is if the shows they like to watch stop being available to them. But until then, they won't ever care about me, and they don't care about my livelihood, and everyone just cares about themselves, and life isn't fair, and I hate everybody, right? Like, I can go down that
Yeah,
road
yeah,
like
yeah.
really, really easily. Now, what happens when I start to feel that way is the feeling inside my body is this loneliness and this isolation and this feeling that people only care about themselves. And that hurts me because I have this fantasy that we all love and care about each other, and life is supposed to be that we love and care about each other. And then I'm kind of faced with this thing that I don't like and I don't want to feel. So from that, I feel that the point of power is just going into that feeling and giving, and first of all, seeing like how old is that feeling? How long have I felt that way? And there's probably a young child in me, like a 2 year old or 4 year old or 6 year old who goes, oh, that's who's really feeling this feeling. Like, that's who felt really alone and isolated and scared and like nobody loved them. Right. And so my job is to say, thank you, circumstance, for giving me the content that allows me to find this context so that I can change my internal relationship with the part of me that feels lonely and sad. And when I can meet that part of myself and befriend that part of myself and give love and energy to that part of myself, my when I come back through that and from that, I imagine my relationship to that circumstance changes, even if the circumstance itself doesn't.
Yeah, that's ninja. It is. That's the ninja word.
And what I can notice when I don't do that,
Yeah.
the opposing thing that I will find myself doing is I start stacking against myself. So that's the thing that I'm going to avoid feeling at all costs. So instead, I'm going to make that stuff out here wrong. I'm going to make it, and I'm going to start building a really good case why I deserve to feel how I feel. And one way I do this, and my husband called me out on this, and I laughed hysterically because I'm like, he's so right. And it made me laugh at myself of how ridiculous it was. But one of the stories I like to tell myself is that I don't have enough time,
Mhm.
that I really like, you know, I'm a mom and I'm working and I'm running a business and I'm doing a podcast and I have friends and I have and I love the story of like there's not enough time to be perfect and excellent at everything that I do, because I have to be perfect and excellent at everything or I don't want to do it, which is a whole other thing. But so there's this story of there's not enough time. So what I will do when I'm overwhelmed and when I'm really feeling the stress of the story I've created of not enough time is my husband will say, "Well, what do you have to do today?" And I'm like, "Well, I have to move the pillows, I have to move the sheets, I have to move the other sheet on top of that sheet, then I have to move the pillows back, and then after I do that, like I have to move the other sheet from the bottom, and then I have to like move this." And he's like, "So you have to make the bed." And I'm like, yes, but I have to do this and then this and then this and all those are part of it. He's like, but can you see that you're stressing yourself out
Oh.
by you need to justify that you feel overwhelmed. So you have to make everything bigger than it is to
Mm.
justify how big the feeling is, right?
Oh.
As opposed to just saying, I'm just a girl who has big feelings. I'm allowed to have big feelings. And it's okay to have big feelings. And those big feelings actually need my friendship and attention. They don't need me to justify them. It's like I'm trying to justify their existence instead of like I would do with my daughter when she's having a big feeling. I just get down on her level. And what I understand in her, without fail, unless she's wet or hungry, without fail, when she's having a big feeling, she needs connection. And that's all it is every single time. And I get down on her level and I put my hand on her back and I look in her eyes and I say, I'm here. And she's fine, because it's actually, I feel disconnected. I feel disconnected and I don't know what to do about it, right? And so I feel like when that part comes up in me where I'm like, I have this to do, 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 it's like it's not about the to-do list. It's not about the given circumstances. It's about the part in me that needs to be connected to. And I need to plug into the part of me that feels scared and overwhelmed and go, what happened to make you feel so disconnected? I want to know about it. I want to hear about it. And usually it starts really whiny. Well, my husband didn't do what I wanted, and then this didn't work out, and then the actors went on strike, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's like, okay, that sounds really scary. It is really scary. Okay, sounds really hard. It is really hard. Okay, anything else you want to share? And like just over time, and I think I'm good.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you want right now? Is there anything you need right now? No. Mm, because the presence gives you everything you need. You just need the presence.
That's right.
Yeah,
And we can
that's
give
my silly process.
no, it's a beautiful process. And we're the only ones who can give ourselves that deep connection first. When you were talking about your daughter and how you get on her level and you put your hand on her back, I was like, ooh, will you do that to me
We'll
sometimes?
totally do that to
I want
you.
that connection. That sounds lovely. But
It works like a
yeah,
charm.
right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so true. Uh, but that is, I mean, that's why we love our friendships, right? Is someone
Mm.
who can attune to us and be with us, and someone who can mirror back what's going on, being heard, being seen like that.
Yeah, and a
But that,
lot of conscious relationships that, like
hmm
a lot of the, psychologists, Nicole Pera, all
yeah,
these wonderful guides that are talking about conscious relationships. A lot of the time, they say when someone shares with you, it's not that they want you to give them an idea
yeah,
or fix it or go, why don't you do this? So that's not why they're sharing. They're sharing so that you go, I hear you. That sounds really hard.
they want attunement.
Yeah,
Yeah, they want presence.
yeah.
It's a desire to say, yeah, come see me,
And it comes
come
from
be
such
with
a
me.
pure place to be like,
Mhm.
Kristen, I want to fix it for you. I want to tell you, why don't you do this? Why don't you try it? Like, it's such a pure place in our humanity, but uh, we can't take the load from someone else, but
Mhm.
we can say, like, I'll sit here with you while you tell me about it,
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were talking, I thought about something that will come up for me is I will sometimes notice that I've put a lot on my plate, right? So then
No.
I know, imagine that.
You?
Yeah, I know. I'll notice that my days are like really full. And when I've done that, it usually means there's something I don't want to feel.
Okay.
So if I like notice like, oh, like all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, man, it's 11 o'clock and I haven't stopped all day. And then it's like a
Mm,
telltale sign of like, oh, see, that was a defense mechanism I used when I was a kid
mm,
to be able to protect myself against big feelings, things that were too hard to feel.
mm.
You know, that there was like a numbing device that would come from overworking or overscheduling. So when I see myself do that now, it's almost like an automatic, like, okay, let's take a few things off and let's take a little walk in nature. Let's go
Mm.
take a little quiet time. Let's see what wants to be heard inside. Because there's actually some wisdom there. There's some knowledge there. There's something that wants to be listened to. And it doesn't. So the overscheduling is like a little alarm bell ringing. Come be
Yeah.
with me. Come be with me.
Yeah. I really get that. I think something that I really try to prioritize is I do take long vacations.
Yeah.
And like so we were in Europe, as I said, with my husband and my daughter, and we were there for 5.5 weeks. I mean, that's a long vacation. Um, but I do find for myself, it takes a week or two for me to even show up on the vacation because my body is busy and uh, outside of presence to such an extent that I can really push myself hard and far. I'm really good at doing the impossible, but the amount of time it takes me to just down regulate, to just be present and be on vacation. I remember there was this one day I was walking around Paris and I was like wandering, and I'm like, I'm so excited. My husband's with a baby, and I'm gonna have my alone solo day in Paris. And I was wandering around, and I couldn't figure out what street to walk down. I'm gonna have a coffee. I couldn't figure out where, I and I felt lost and incredibly disconnected. And then finally, it's like just pick a place and sit down. And I ordered a coffee and a croissant, and I opened my book. And then at first it was like, oh, that person's smoking. Maybe I should move. Or, oh, this is happening. Maybe I should. Maybe I don't want the croissant. Maybe I wanted a chocolate croissant. And like it was so hard to just be here now, be with what is, be with what you ordered, be with the table you chose. Just be with it, just sit with it, see. And it took me about a half hour to just notice that my breath was tight, to notice like, oh, there's a deep breath. And then it got fun. Then it was like, now I want to wander down that street. And now I feel comfortable in the non-doing. But it felt really uncomfortable to be in the non-doing because I had come from such an intense period of doing, 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 achieving, achieving, achieving.
Yeah.
It actually took time, like
Yes.
real time to go, oh, my nervous system has been on high alert continuously in hypervigilance for a long time.
For a long time.
And a gift that came from this is inside, so that I got to spend the whole rest of the vacation really in presence. And like I said, just with my daughter and her awe and her wonder and seeing her taking steps and figuring out what things were. And every day towards the end of the trip for 9 days straight, every day we went to the ocean and we sat on these long chairs under these umbrellas, and she would nap and I would read a book and we would lie there and we'd take her in the ocean to play. And it was just this magical little moment in time, and the weather was beautiful. And I kept looking at this little mole on my foot. And it was like there was a little thing that kept drawing my attention to it. I kept looking at it. And I look at that cute little mole on my foot. And I was like, so weird to have a mole on your foot. And it kept bringing into my awareness. And it got to the point where at the end of that 9 days, I had thought about that little mole so many times that I literally thought, it's so weird that I've been thinking about that little mole. Like, what a weird thing to think about, but it's come up in my consciousness so many times. I'm going to go see the dermatologist and I'm going to get it looked at.
Oh, so good.
And it was suspicious and they removed it.
Whoa.
And I genuinely feel that my presence and my intuition knew that there was something going on, and didn't, and only inside the space was I able to hear it and get it.
Yes.
And that other, because otherwise, like, that little mole would still be sitting on my foot for years to come. I wouldn't ever like. And so I do think that when we talk about the hits of the stress and the outrage, I want to do what feels like my right action, and I want to go where I feel justice is needed, and I want to go where I feel like I'm being called to go. And I need to check in to make sure that there is enough presence and stillness and listening in my life that I'm not missing sacred signs and communication that is coming my way, that is for me, not what I need to do or be in the world.
Yeah, that's why the space is needed. That was a message I actually got last weekend really clearly was, oh, I need to put space, like deliberate space on my calendar, just to be able to listen to the guidance, to be
Mhm.
able to listen to that kind of communication that wants to come through. Um, and something that's really alive for me right now, especially like in light of my father passing this year, what do I just need? I don't need to do.
Mhm.
If I don't need to do it, so that I can be more available for the things that I really want to be present for,
Mm.
you know? And it's kind of like a minimalism in life. And I'm a maximalist kind of person. I want it all. And I'd like to taste it all. I want to try it all. I'm curious. I want to put my finger in there. I want to search and explore. Um, but but there's a calling to create more space so that the hearing can get a little bit more
A little
attuned,
sharper.
a little sharper,
Yeah.
and that like my deep sensitivity that knows things about things can communicate that information.
Yeah.
One of the things I know is that there can be, this is really alive for me right now. I think there's a couple of things and some situations I need to walk away from, and where I'll just get a sense that a certain person might just not be the right kind of person for me. So especially happen in like work environments,
Mm.
and I'll get the communication, and then I won't listen to it.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to teach myself, like, you get to a point where you're like, I just don't want to get that lesson again. I've
Yes.
gotten that lesson already a few times where
Yes.
I can be like, "Ah, it's just not the right situation for me. It's
Yes.
just not the right match. And I need to walk away." And I'm really curious right now. I'm actually sitting in, what is that thing that actually keeps me from taking action once I've gotten the
The
communication,
message.
once
Yeah.
I've gotten the message?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do think there's several things that show up. One of the things that showed up for
Hmm.
some of the people that attended our retreat is I don't hear anything, or I'm not getting anything, or I'm not receiving anything, and it's like it might take some time, almost like my trip took a little bit of time to have
Yeah.
some of these things feel available. And I think that sometimes what can happen is, um, in some stages of the process, it's like, I'm not quite getting it till it's too late.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I'm not quite hearing it, or I don't know how to listen to it. And that's one thing to start cultivating by just being in a little bit more listening, a little bit more presence, carving out a little more space, like you said. And then it's like the next evolution is really what you've described really beautifully, is like, so now I'm getting it, but like,
Now I have to do something scary. I
yeah,
don't want to do the scary thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's almost like once if I make space, I get the message, now I have to act on the thing I've heard.
Yes.
And that sometimes means being brave and courageous in
Yes.
places I am I ready? Can I do it?
Yeah.
You know?
And I always come back to, well, if I got the message, I must be ready.
Yeah, I wouldn't get it if I wasn't ready.
But that I agree. That's a really, really hard part of the process. And this is all like
Mm-hmm.
this little, school called life. This is about our evolution. And so these are just things for us to practice.
Yes.
They're just, there's no bad girl, good girl, right, wrong, like, oh, you failed. I
Mhm.
love how Oprah talks about, like, it comes as a whisper and
Yeah.
then it shouts at me and then it screams at me and it throws things at my head. And she's like, I just got to the point where I didn't want to get to the point of it throwing things at my head anymore.
I'm
You know
so
what I
tired of
mean?
the brick wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I have so
Um,
many bruises.
but it's okay because it's part of how we learn.
Part of the learning.
It's there's no shame or condemning yourself
Yeah.
if you get the message and you don't quite feel ready, you don't quite know how to
Yeah.
do it. You just keep saying, "Show me." Just keep being
Yes.
willing, um, and the serenity prayer is
Yes.
really what I come back to over and over and over. You know, the like the ability to do what is mine to do, like the courage to do those things
Mhm.
and the wisdom to know what's not mine, and that just the ability to pray for or ask for or seek out that courage if it feels really hard and sticky.
Oh, thank you for reminding me to pray for the courage.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the part we miss. I'm really like the wisdom to know the difference is like really big. Like,
Yeah.
give me the discernment, give me the clarity. But then it's like, oh, but I have the clarity and then I don't have the courage to do
The courage. Yeah,
it.
it's the courage to change.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a hard part of it.
Yeah. And I can feel you said a great thing about from boundaries. Do you have that? Will you read that?
What did I say?
You sent a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert about
Oh, I
boundaries,
really do
and
have
it's
it. Do
yeah,
have
it
it.
was so beautiful. But when you sent it, I thought, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
the place I'm being called, and the place I'm being called to requires. It's almost like a higher level of things that are in alignment with my heart. Yeah.
Ugh, yes. It's like I almost don't want to read it because then I'm going to have to be responsible to living
Yes.
it. You know what I mean? This is actually from Elizabeth Gilbert, which was inspired by her dear friend Martha Beck. So this is a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert. It's a bit of a long quote, so I encourage you, unless you're driving, just close your eyes and sink into these words. They're very powerful. Okay. How do we live open-hearted lives without being victims of constant attack? Allow me to introduce you to the alpha mare. Now, when she says mare, it's mare, like the horse, the alpha mare, the alpha female horse. This is an idea that came to me through my beloved friend Martha Beck, who explained to me how the psychology of a herd of horses works. At the top of the hierarchy of a herd of horses, there is an alpha mare, and she is the leader. Stallions come and go, but the mare is in charge of the herd forever. All of the other horses look to her in order to know what to do and how to feel. And as long as she remains calm, the rest of the herd feels calm. And the alpha mare is always calm because her boundaries are airtight. She knows exactly who she is and nobody messes with it. Nobody approaches the alpha mare without her invitation. Nobody imposes themselves on the alpha mare against her will. The alpha mare never lets herself be influenced by another horse's fears or anxieties or aggression. She knows what the right thing to do is, and she does it, and everyone follows. She doesn't need anyone's approval for anything. She doesn't need anyone's permission. She lives and breathes from a place of integrity, and certainty because of her strong and appropriate boundaries. And as a result, she is always relaxed. Because she is relaxed, everyone around her is relaxed. Thus, the whole herd can live safely and peacefully around her with undefended hearts. And the alpha mare's heart is undefended too. It is fear that makes you defend your heart. But once you have discovered appropriate boundaries, you do not need to live in constant fear. Until you learn how to hold appropriate boundaries and stand in integrity and speak your truth, you will never have a relaxed moment in your life. This is true. Ugh. You will live like a fugitive, always on the run, always hiding, always afraid of being exposed. A heart without healthy and appropriate boundaries can only suffer in a constant state of anxiety and defense, vigilant against the next attack, helpless against other people's will. To live with an undefended heart does not mean you walk out in the world like a helpless child, wide open and boundaryless, and you let anyone do anything to you that they please. That is not openness, that is weakness. No. You can only live with an undefended heart once you know the difference between this is okay for me and this is not okay for me. So you never need to worry about stress, about what's going to happen to you next, what someone will say next, or who will harm you. Once you know the difference between this is okay and this is not okay, you can walk anywhere in this world safely, your guard down, your eyes filled with curiosity, your soul filled with simple wonder. That is the alpha mare, and she is hiding inside you somewhere, waiting to come out. I know she is. Elizabeth Gilbert.
Oh, I really need to read it every morning.
Every day. Every time I read it, it's like that call to action in my being
Yes.
that I'm scared of, that I need to pray for the courage.
Yes, that's it. Teach me how to do this.
Teach
Teach
me
me how to do it. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you everyone for listening. We're so happy to be back. We'll
Yes.
see you soon. Share it with a friend.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being committed to showing up for your dreams.
If you would like to know more about what we are up to, or find more information about our podcast, upcoming retreats, or anything else, please go check out our website, www.thecreateseries.com.
And you can come and jam with us on Facebook. I know, we're still on Facebook. We have a Create community page, and that's Create, C.R.E.A.T.E..
And if you want to check us out on Instagram, you can find me, Natalie, at Miss Natalie Roy.
And you can find me at Hangilove. That's HANGGILOVE.
Keep on rocking your dreams, and we can't wait to connect with you more.